New York Giants fans, this is a safe space. I'm sure, like me, all of you went into that game on Sunday with a sense of hope, with the idea that this could be the time that the Giants started to get it on track right before they went into a bye week versus a team that was beatable, coming off of a game versus a team with 7+ wins that was beatable, after another game with a quarterback who's hot as fish grease, and that was beatable. This seemed like the time. And on top of that, we were getting an opportunity to see Evan Neal play for the first time this season. There was a lot to look forward to. And while there were some things that didn't disappoint, man, oh man, there were a lot of things that did. I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of A Giant Issue. I am Coach Gene Clemons, New York Giants on SI. That's where you get all of your New York Giants news and information from. And also make sure, hey, we're into the 1800s, right? We're into the 1800s, which means that we are starting to get to that point where 2,000 subscribers is imminent. We're at 1812 right now. As I count, as I refresh right now, we are at 1812. I am proud of that. I know Paul Dottino is proud of that. It has been a labor of love to build up the viewership here. Really do appreciate everybody that's come along for the ride and everybody that's going to stay along for the ride. Again, we look at those analytics and I can see the people who have been rocking since day one. Last pod, I asked if you were, which side you were on. If you were on the side of people who vote for the Giants to win, even if they don't have a chance of making the playoffs, or you on the side of the people who root for the Giants to lose because you believe that that's the best way for this team to get better and to be able to control their own destiny in the draft. Again, both sides come from wanting the best, right? Both sides come from wanting the best for the New York Giants. And so I'm not here to ridicule those people who feel the other way, but you guys know how I feel. I want to win every single game that we line up and that there's a scoreboard. I want to win. I like to consider myself a winner. When I don't win, I look for the ways to become a winner. I've never sacrificed the win now for the win later. I've always thought about later, but I've never sacrificed the win now for the win later. For instance, on my football team, and shout out to the Adam Smashers of Johnson High School. We didn't have a great season, but going into the year, we had some setbacks in the summer, and we sat back and said, hey, listen, if we have a young guy who is similar to the older guy, we're going to make an opportunity for that young guy to play. We're not sticking to this whole, well, you're a senior, so just because you're a senior, you get the opportunity to play. We were putting people out there who earned the right to play. And that ended us up with several freshmen and sophomores around our offensive and defensive line. It ended up us with a sophomore as a quarterback. I tell you that story to tell you this. I'm looking at the New York Giants, right? And I'm looking at them, and I'm going to take it back a couple weeks. Well, not a couple weeks. I'm going to take it back a few weeks. I'm going to take it back to when Andrew Thomas gets hurt. When Andrew Thomas gets injured, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was the it was the Cincinnati Bengals game, right? And so when Andrew Thomas gets injured in that Cincinnati Bengals game, I remember coming on here and being pretty critical of Andrew Thomas because he didn't play a good game, right? He didn't. Well, I shouldn't say he didn't play a good game. He didn't play a normal Andrew Thomas game, but he gave up some sacks. And I remember saying, hey, y'all get on Evan Neal. If he gave up 2 sacks and a bunch of pressures, you get on him. Like, Andrew Thomas needs to be held to that standard. And then some of us said, yeah, but we've seen Andrew Thomas do it for multiple years, and that's fair, right? And then we find out that he was injured, and I go, well, that explains it, right? He probably came into the game with the injury. But I remember after that game going, this is the perfect time to put Evan Neal out there on the field. This was a Giants Bengals game that the Giants had an opportunity to win that they just can't, they couldn't sustain anything offensively. The next week, they put Jeremy Azudu out there. Right? And that was after a game where Evan Neal, not only did Evan Neal get bashed on, but Illuminor started showing some signs of weakness. Then they played the Eagles and they put Joshua Azudu out there. I may have said Jeremy, and I apologize again if I did. They put Joshua Azudu out there, and it was bad. But it wasn't really good on the other side either with Jermaine Illuminor. And they ended up getting beat 28-3. Saquon coming back, doing what he did. He's so unselfish as a football player that over these last few weeks where they've been balling, the Eagles I'm talking about, he hasn't even pushed the envelope. So his statistics are actually dropping, not because he hasn't been good, but because he's not playing in the fourth quarter, or he's not playing in the second half. In the game versus their last game, he didn't even play in the second half. Outside of maybe the first couple of maybe the first series of the second half, maybe into the second series, but after that, he didn't play. They shut him down. Right? So anyway, I digress. They play against the Eagles, it's not good. They play against the Steelers. They take out Azudu. They put in the guy off the street and put him in at left tackle. And if people wonder why I don't say Hubbard's name, is because I'm really trying to not call him out, because it's not his fault he got put out there, right? It's not his fault. He just did. But he was bad. Illuminor was bad against the Steelers. Then they play against the Commanders, because the Steelers game was a game they should have won. It was a game they should have won, right? But they didn't. Then they play the Commanders. And Hubbard's still out there, still not being good. And it's a game they should have won, but they didn't. And so finally, versus the Panthers, they say, hey, we're going to put Illuminor at left tackle. We're going to put Evan Neal at right tackle. I go, man, why not keep the continuity of the other 4 offensive linemen and just put Evan Neal at left tackle? Now you don't have to change anything about the continuity of the other 4 and just replace him at left tackle. Nope. Illuminor to left, him over to right. I say, doesn't make any sense to me. Illuminor, no experience. Then people corrected me and said, yeah, he played a little bit of left tackle with the Raiders. And my response to that again was, well, that's great, but that experiment didn't last long. And then the Raiders got rid of him. What are we talking about here? So they put him at left tackle. They put Neal at right tackle. And everybody's like, oh, that's the Evan Neal experiment, blah, 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 blah. And then Evan Neal goes out there and does not give up a sack. And while he's not giving up a sack, you know what people were starting to do afterwards? Even at New York Giants on the SI, where they were talking about Evan Neal. Oh, well, his run blocking was dominant, but his pass blocking was still a little shaky. I don't give a darn what your pass blocking looks like as long as it's effective. I don't want you to tell me, oh, well, you know, he looked a little bit sloppy, off balance. You know what? That doesn't matter at this point. Point number one, emphasis number one is to keep the quarterback upright by any means necessary. And he did that. He did that. Even on the flea flicker, he did that. He didn't give up a sack. It wasn't him giving up the sacks, right? So I look at that and I go, man, it's so crazy to me how he could play so good versus the Panthers and against the guy who had double-digit sacks last year in Jadeveon Clowney. He lined up almost exclusively over there on Evan Neal's side, and then people would point out, oh, well, you know, they gave him a little help, Chip with the tight end, and they gave him a little help with the guard. I didn't see any help with the guard. I don't understand how a guard can help with a speed rush, right? If the guy runs inside, he's supposed to help because that's the guard's responsibility if they're not man blocking, right? So if the defensive end goes from outside of Neal to inside of Neal, the guard should be there to help because that's how a pass blocking scheme is supposed to be done. I did see them chip a couple times with the tight end, but not 40 times, not 35 times. So the idea that Neal was being helped all this time, come on, man. Y'all are doing too much. Out of the 37 recorded passes for Daniel Jones, how many of them had a chip by the tight end on them? Not a lot. There were a few play actions where it took him out of the responsibility of the edge rusher, right? So let's dwindle it down and let's say 30 pass blocking attempts. And Daniel Jones had one pressure that came on a screen that they were trying to set up. That was the only pressure that Evan Neal gave up all night. That's a damn good job, ladies and gentlemen. And I can't help but wonder what happens if you make this decision 4 weeks ago. If after the Bengals game, you go, we're putting Evan Neal in. Even if you said we're putting him in at right tackle and you put Illuminor at left tackle, what's different in that Eagles game where they got absolutely manhandled on the pass rush? How is that different? What's different in that Steelers game where they got absolutely manhandled on the pass rush? Who knows? If you're going to start giving help to the tackle, why didn't you give Illuminor help from tight ends chipping versus the Steelers? Like, how is that Commanders game different if Neal is in there instead of the guy that they just brought off the street? So there's 4 games in between the time where Andrew Thomas got hurt and now there's 4 games. Did they just in their brain go, no, we're trying to make it to the bye week before we put Neal in so we can start fresh? If that's the case, then just tell us. Tell us that's what you were trying to do. But ultimately, I go back to my logic with my high school team. Is Neal somewhat as good as what Illuminor is? The answer is yes. It's not that big a difference. And that means Neal needs to be out there. Now, does Illuminor need to be out there right now? Absolutely. But Neal needs to be out there. Why? Because I have a future and a ceiling with Neal that Illuminor can never touch. Why? Because Illuminor is already in his 30s. And Neal's too young to try to lay out to pasture. He's too young to watch him go somewhere else and figure it out. He's too young to give up on the opportunity for him to flourish when healthy. That's it. That's the rub. That's the truth. There were a lot of things wrong. There was a lot of things wrong with that game. But you know what was not wrong with that game? You know what didn't go wrong in that game? Evan Neal didn't go wrong. Evan Neal did not go wrong. If there was somebody that got it done that day, guess who it was? It was Evan Neal. Evan Neal got it done that day. And I think about these things and I go, would it have been perfect over the last 3 weeks before this Panthers game if Neal was in there? No, because nothing's ever going to be perfect. And would Neal probably give up a sack? Possibly. Possibly, right? But how much better would your run blocking be? How much better would Neal be 4 weeks in? Which means that by this time, when you play against the Panthers, you have a unit offensively that's been playing together for 4 weeks that maybe the quarterback feels more comfortable behind. Maybe he's not as skittish. Maybe they call plays differently because of the trust that they have in that line. I don't know. All I know is when you put out people who are subpar to the person that you have right there on the bench, you set yourself up for failure. Is that purposeful failure? Are you failing on purpose because you fall on that side of the fence of wanting to win every single game? Or is that just, hey, we made a mistake? Here's what I can accept. I can accept coaches saying, hey, I made a mistake. I can accept GM saying, hey, I made a mistake. I cannot accept the BS excuses that this regime continues to give on why they will not give, or why they have not given that man a chance until now. And I don't like that they left it out there for speculation so that all of these Giants fans out here, so all of these Giants content creators out here could tell you with a straight face, well, if Neal can't play over these guys, how bad must he be? And guess what the answer is? Not that he's not worse than they are. This has nothing to do with his ability to play. I told you guys this. I said, if they put Neal out there, and this is, again, why I believe they refuse to put him at left tackle. Right? Because if he does this at left tackle, whoa, baby, we got a whole different story. We got a completely different story brewing. But this is why I told you they didn't want to put him back out there. Because if he goes back out there and he's productive and he is sound as a pass blocker, was he great? Was he phenomenal? No. Was he effective? Absolutely. Was he a monster in the run game? You darn right he was. He was getting people up out the club. There were several big runs that came right off of his block. Several. Not one, not two, not three, but several big runs that came right off his block. And there should have been a couple more that Tyrone Tracy didn't actually see the cutback lane when he collapsed that side. He tried to press it. He tried to press it and stay true. If he'd have cut back a little bit more, he would have saw the lane and been out of there. He eventually saw it and then took it for a touchdown. Right? Like, this is what or took it for a big gain. I don't know if it's a touchdown. But this is what I'm telling you. This is what I'm referring to when I say, hey, they might not have wanted him out there. This was a we got no other choice but to put him out there type of scenario. Because at some point, it would have just became laughable. At some point, somebody would have had to just like explain it. Now I could come on here today and I can talk about how bad Daniel Jones was, but what good does that do? What good does that do? Right? People will just say, I'm just using it to pile on because I got nothing else to talk about. Oh no, baby, I got plenty of things to talk about. Like I didn't have any reason to bag on Daniel Jones. He already embarrassed me enough. I put him. I write and I do content for Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. So check me out there if you got an LG TV. Definitely check me out on the LG channel on Tuesdays or Thursdays, depending on which day I'm on there. And all the other stuff that I do for Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. But I do a start sit column, and my bold prediction start was to start Daniel Jones versus the Carolina Panthers. Why? Because every other quarterback that plays against the Carolina Panthers, they have a day. And you know what's the sad part? Is that even within his game that he had are the bones of a really, really good day. He just didn't execute it. He just didn't execute it. That's all. The bones of a really good day in fantasy was there, and he just didn't have it. And guess what? If he has a really good day in fantasy, most likely your team's going to win. That's how it works with fantasy football when it comes to the quarterback position. If the quarterback has a really good day in fantasy, the team normally wins. And if they don't, it's probably because the quarterback did something that got the team into a bad situation where he then was able to just collect like empty calorie yards. Like what they do out in LA with Justin Herbert for the last few years until this year. So like I had him on a national platform. I was saying Daniel Jones is the start. On Sirius XM Radio, the NFL station, Sunday morning, right before the game came on, Daniel Jones is the start. I like Daniel Jones over a lot of these other quarterbacks this week. I love the matchup. That was me. That was me. And yet, that's what happened. So I don't have to come on here and talk about it like it's already done. But what I can come on here and tell you is, right? It's going to have to be something over the break. It's going to have to be something over the break that changes the dynamic on how they, i.e., utilize Daniel Jones or whether or not he's out there. Like I still operate underneath the guise that he gives you the best opportunity to win. But the truth is, does that matter? If he gives you the best opportunity to win and he's not playing up to his full potential, then it doesn't matter. You got to go in another direction. And right now, he's not playing up to his full potential. So, in my opinion, over the bye week, you get the other guys ready. You get the other guys ready. And you tell Daniel Jones, hey, man, it's a short leash. If you come out and you play like you've been playing, we're putting somebody else in. But you tell those other guys, it's a short leash. If you come out and you don't do any better, we're putting someone else in. And we start running through quarterbacks for the rest of the season until we find a hot hand. Because I still believe Daniel Jones gives this team the best opportunity to win this year with the quarterbacks that they have on the roster. But I can't quite forget about the fact that they had Tyrod Taylor and just refused to pay him. Like, I can't get over that. Oh, Tyrod Taylor, he always gets hurt. Yeah. But when he's not hurt, does he ever look like Daniel Jones? The answer is no. Does he throw a better deep ball than Daniel Jones? The answer is unequivocally yes. the opportunity to open up this offense vertically is something that is sorely missing. How much better would the run game be if you were able to operate more vertically? How much better with the intermediate pass game? You know, all of those passes that they throw to Malik Neighbors and to Wan'Dale Robinson, where they get hit immediately, and then y'all try to blame them for not living up to, you know, what they're supposed to be doing, Salicata. Like, you try to make them out to be the reasons. I've heard people say, well, you know, Wan'Dale Robinson is just never going to be good because he's so small. You think that's the reason why Wan'Dale Robinson isn't performing better? Because, like, he's small? Really? Have you ever looked at Wan'Dale Robinson's body? No, pause, no craziness. Wan'Dale Robinson is a very well put together kid. I mean, not kid, but young man. He's not like waif thin. He is well put together, well structured. You know why? Because he's short. Durability issues be damned. He played the whole season last year. He's played this whole season. He's the only wide receiver that has. Neighbors has been out with concussions, right? Thought he might have went out with another one. Slayton is now out with a concussion. He's the one that's been consistently there. Because size is not a skill. Size is not a skill. Being bigger does not make you tougher, does not make you more durable. See Darren Waller. If height and size were a skill, then Darren Waller would be a Hall of Famer. But his body couldn't hold up. It kept breaking down on him. It ultimately made him decide that he didn't want to do this anymore. So I'm looking at this coaching staff, who, by the way, I do not believe should be fired. But I do believe they need to do some soul searching over this week. And we'll talk about it. But man, was it nice to be the one who was banging the table for Evan Neal, right? It was fantastic to be the guy banging the table for Evan Neal, and for Evan Neal to come out there and prove me right. Not one sack given up. Only one pressure given up. I don't care what it looked like. I don't care what you try to tell me. On X, I posted every pass blocking, every pass protection that he had in the game. And you know what I came away with going? That's a darn good first game. That's a darn good first game. Can he do it versus the Cowboys? We'll see. Can he do it when they play the Eagles again? We'll see. But that's a good sign. Oh, yes, absolutely. That is a fantastic sign. Should they still keep chipping with tight ends? Absolutely. Send some over there to the Illuminor side, too. Should they help with a running back from time to time? Absolutely. Especially when you see those guys line up super wide and you know they're about to hit them with the ultra speed rush. Absolutely. They definitely should. But it's so nice when you think, hey, this should be done, and they do it, and then it looks like it's supposed to look. So for all you people going out there, Evan Neal is trash. Guess what you're probably going to do? You're probably still going to think Evan Neal's trash. And guess what I'm probably going to do? I'm probably going to say, he's so young that you can't give up on young talent because you'll get to watch them be good somewhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have. New York Giants on SI. That's where you get all your New York Giants news and information from. Make sure you go there for everything that's going on with the New York Giants. I might even have something coming that way this week. Also, if you have not already done so, make sure you tell a friend, subscribe to the podcast. In other words, subscribe to this channel, right? The New York Giants on SI. YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. We're doing big things. That's where you can find this. That's what you're here for. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemons, and I have a giant issue.